Hey, everybody, welcome to the Turn and Burn podcast, Episode 8. I'm here with Chris Licasio. I'm Jason, the owner of JR Custom Designs and the creator of Rotoboss Rotary Attachments. Um, Chris, obviously, he introduce himself here real quick.
Chris Licasio, owner of House of Lasers, and also work for Thunder Laser as tech support and training and video extraordinaire, I guess.
A little bit of everything, then.
That's right.
All right, so this episode we want to do something a little bit different, and you know, we've been talking offline about some different things as far as like the laser community, and laser machines and peripherals and everything for the laser industry. And we got some other guests that are supposed to be joining us. Of course, they're late as always, and you can probably guess who that might be just by me making that statement. But hopefully they'll join us later. We'll bring them in as they come in. But yeah, we just wanted to go ahead and kind of talk about how the laser world has changed, and probably at least in our time of doing this, so the past 10 12 years, kind of where things started, where they've gone, and where we kind of think they're going to be going in the future. So don't really have don't really have a set plan as to anything. Again, it's always kind of driven by the viewers. So if you have anything or any questions, just let us know as we kind of go through this. So if you're watching, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this is interesting or entertaining or both. And we'll go ahead and kick it off. So Chris, hey, we got our guest popping in here. Hey,
I'm barely ever on time for my own show. I'm shocked I made it here as early as I did. What's up, guys?
What's up, Alex?
yeah,
How are you?
We kind of figured you'd be a little bit behind.
Well,
right.
I can get away with not having the camera up on my own show, but like when I'm coming on to somebody else's show, I feel like I need to have the webcam up, and I realized I haven't touched the thing in like, I don't know, 2 months. So I had to like get it all set up for the home office and get my background blurred so you couldn't see all my baby's stuff. It was a process.
Hey, no worries. Glad to have you in with us. I don't know if you heard. Don't know if you heard the intro, but we're just kind of talking about the kind of the evolution of the past 10 or so years of lasers, and where they've come from and where they've gone, and where we think they're heading in the future. So
that is not a small topic.
No. I try to cram a lot into an hour. So
but there's some really interesting assets to it, though. I mean, you're talking about these machines were very difficult to get a hold of. You were in the industry of some sort, sign industry, trophy industry, something like that, to have one. Yeah. And now you can buy one for a couple $100.
Yeah.
So it's crazy at where the technology has come, but also the price level and the amount of information from people like me, like people like you that have, put it out there, because it was definitely a trade secret back in the day.
Yeah. I remember one of the things that we said on Laser Everything a long time ago, way long before it was anything that resembled what it is today, was that I had a feeling that someday, like, fiber lasers and galvo lasers in general would be like, I compared them often to drill presses. I was like, this machinery used to be like this bizarre thing that you only found in factories, and now everybody has one in their garage. Like every single person has one in their garage, and we're definitely heading that way. It's the technology is being democratized, and big time, especially the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. To the point. Well, I mean, you see a lot of it. Do you feel like it's getting flooded?
How do you mean?
There's a lot of people entering into it because it is so affordable without a clue, which is not bad. I mean, we all started there, right?
Right.
But making $5 cups versus the person that has honed their skills in and is charging a real dollar value and a profit and trying to keep the doors open, as opposed to the the guy that comes home from work and has a couple minutes and makes a cup.
There's certainly there's a saturation, and I think that saturation inherently devalues what the technology can do because people are familiar with it. And I think the familiarity is what is devaluing the end product or the service that people are providing, not necessarily the saturation itself. Because like you said, the vast majority of that saturation lacks skill and practice, right? So it's not that you can't get a machine like this and outclass your competition. I still think that's very easy to do. I don't think the bar is set very high, but I do think that there's effort required now. You have to make a concerted effort. And I think now more than ever, another piece of advice we're giving constantly on the Laser Source podcast, I'm sure you two have heard it before, is that it doesn't really pay to be a jack of all trades anymore. You have to pick something that you like doing and do it better than anybody else, and that's where the success is. I think that the saturation, again, it comes with an inherent devaluing of what we can do. And that's not even necessarily a bad thing, but it does exist, and it's something you have to pay attention to. You're not novel for owning a Galvo laser anymore, so there's steps you have to take beyond that, where in order to continue forward and be profitable, if this is something that you're trying to do as a business, you definitely, there's some pivoting and some thought that needs to go into your next steps.
What are your thoughts,
Yeah,
Jake?
absolutely. What's that?
So what are your thoughts?
I mean, as far as the saturation, I mean, I think it is getting there. I don't think it's quite there yet. Like Alex was saying, with so many people doing it, and like you said too, you got everybody racing to the bottom, especially with the Etsy shops and all that stuff, which make a few
That's hard to
bucks.
compete with.
Good on you, but you get what you pay for a lot of times, because most self-respecting and honest laser users, I don't think, will do that.
And I think part of that conversation, the takeaway would be what Alex said was, it's not a bad thing to have it saturated with mediocrity.
Yeah.
So in what better world can you set yourself apart?
Yep.
Besides being, you got all these middle, not bottom feeders, but you got these people hovering in the middle, but you set your bar here and create amazing stuff. Not like you said, the jack of all trades, but you create amazing, dude, hone it in, and you make amazing stuff, what you're good at.
Yeah. I think don't be the laser guy. That doesn't pay anymore. Be the coin guy. When people need coins, they think of you, or be the tumbler guy. Make the perfect tumbler. Do perfect 360 wraps. Like really nail that down. That's months of practice that we're talking about. But I also go ahead, Jason. What?
No, I was just gonna say, we're talking about back, kind of the history and the current state of things. Like back in the day, I mean, if you had a 60 or 100 watt laser, you were the go-to person. Like you had it in the bag pretty much. You could do everything.
You were the laser guy.
Yeah, I mean, you were the guy. And now with the advancements in the technology, which makes things cheaper, plus all the people coming in, because I mean, there's, like me and Chris were kind of talking offline before this. There's so many companies just trying to race to get $1 out of this market. However short or long lived that might be.
Look at how fast that race is going, and the new X tool, I think.
Yep.
Well, and they're having, I mean, how many issues are they having with that, and the recalls or just not working out of the box? Yep. I mean, but the rush was to give out a product, to sell a product.
Well, it's like Epilogue. I mean, look at Epilogue. I believe it's Epilogue anyways. They just recently came out, like probably within the last year, their first glass tube CO2 laser, to try to compete with the lower end market. I don't see much of them because the prices of them are still through the freaking roof. But they've tried to enter the lower level market that they've been missing out on all these years.
I think too, like right now we're seeing a lot of weird amalgamations of lasers in the consumer. I call it the consumer market because that's who they're selling to. They're selling to consumers. They're not selling to people that are trying to make a business. Occasionally you'll find business people that a consumer product will meet their needs. And we talk about that on the channel too. Like diodes are excellent at photo engraving, right? You get that really small dot size. They have their place, but people that are just buying this and this is their laser and they're never going to evolve beyond this. They just have it. Those are consumers, and those are the vast majority of the people buying these things. And we're going through a phase right now. I see a phase where companies are trying, they're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so the tech is constantly changing, right? We're seeing IR modules were on gantry diodes for a while, and those kind of fell off. And now everybody's doing galvo models. And at first they were using semiconductor 1064 nanometer like modules inside. Now they're trying to fit like max sources into the F1 Ultra. Everything is changing. There's a new model every 6 months, but that's not how it's always going to be. And a great example of this, if we look back 10 years, because we're talking about history today, right? Let's look at 10 years ago. What's up, Kyle? 10 years ago, the Cricut hit the market. You guys remember that? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, vinyl cutting was not a thing that you did in a warehouse with a plotter. It was something you did in your garage or on your kitchen counter, and that it changed, it revolutionized things. And they came out with all kinds of wacky stuff the first 3-5 years that vinyl cutting was like the home thing that you did now. And then it kind of settled, right? When's the last time you heard about a new Cricut model? It's not because they're not making any money anymore. The market's just settled, right? They have their place. They put out their product. They've more or less perfected it, and they make small revisions every now and then. You don't hear about it so often anymore. Another great example is 3D printing, right? We saw the weirdest 3D printers you could ever imagine. The first 5 years, that technology was really democratized. And it wasn't just in warehouses and factories and manufacturing facilities, but in homes and garages. And now 3D printers, right? I mean, every once in a while, you'll see something novel like the bamboo, but for the most part, the technology has settled. They're still selling the Ender 3 and the Ender 5. You know what I mean? Like it's settled. And so right now, I think we're in that weird period where the low end, the consumer manufacturers are making consumer products are just doing everything to find the thing that will end up being the thing that settles. It'll probably there will probably be a gantry version of that and a galvo version of that. And I don't think we're there yet. I think we have another year or two to iron that out. But the point is, I mean, there's still makers that are cutting vinyl and doing 3D prints and making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing that out of their garage. And it's because they're the best at what they do. They're making perfect products and they're really good at marketing them. And if you want to be that, if you want to survive this change in the industry that we're going through right now with laser, that democratization of the technology, then you have to start being the best. I'm not sure at what, but at something, and you need to tell people about it.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, you see all these guys on TikTok and Instagram and everything that are blowing up like Chance Custom Grains. I mean, he found a niche, and he's running with it. You know, he's made a place for himself. There's other people as well, but just as an example, and that's, I mean, like to your point, I mean, you have to do that. You can't just be, like you said, the laser person or guy or girl or whatever. You got to have a purpose. You got to have a mission, and you got to, own it. You have to perfect it. That's why, like, so many times, and I mean, back when we started about 8 to 10 years ago or whatever it was at this point, I don't know. Like people that got into lasers, that the business was their goal in mind. Like that was their purpose. So it was very professionally oriented. And now I wouldn't say it's not still professional, but there's a lot of people in there that kind of stain the chat groups and things like that. They've been using a laser for a month or 3 months or whatever, and they're an expert.
They get it. They get it out of the box, and they want to do their wrap. That's the first thing they do. I'm like, why are you going straight to a rotary? Learn how to use the damn machine first.
But
Man.
I mean, not that's not kind of what I meant. But I mean, as far as like, we've always been a pretty tight community as far as the laser community. I think open to share information, knowledge, all that stuff. But I can see as things shift the way that they're shifting, that people are starting to kind of close down, like, because it is such a big market now. It's kind of like 3D printers, open source. Now all these companies are starting to close source their information and their coding and all that stuff for their machines. So it's not as open as it once was. And I kind of see that in the laser community. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. But it just feels like to me that, the more people get in, the more people are closing down. And maybe it's because people are asking so many of the same questions over and over.
There's not a lot of original thinking out there anymore.
Yeah.
It's, I see this and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to sell it.
Yeah.
And that will drive people, and it will probably reel some of the market back in, but that will drive people to be, closed about their processes and something like that.
I mean, I know
Kyle,
people,
welcome.
Hey, Kyle.
What's up?
I know people that have been that I've talked to in confidence that they're working on a design or a project. They're like, hey, what do you think about this? Just don't tell nobody, because as soon as they release it or do it, someone's going to try to copy it. Things like that, and I'm seeing and hearing a lot more of that coming from people. So that's why I kind of think people are starting to kind of close down on that and not be as open about sharing information.
Well, if we look again to history, right? Another industry that shares roots with the laser industry along the same path are like trophy shops and rotary engravers. And they have been selling the same stuff, doing it the same way for like 30 years, and they're still here. They're still around. They're still selling products. And it's not because they ran out of secrets to keep. Like that's not really the point. I think that those kinds of places have relationships with people and they market themselves really well, and they do a specific thing. They make trophies and customize trophies. That's what they do. You don't see them in there with urns and cutting boards and all kinds of other shit. They are the trophy shop. You go there to get the trophies. When your kid has a soccer tournament and you need all of those participation trophies, you go to the trophy shop. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. People are gonna kind of close up and clamshell themselves shut and try to hide their designs and their processes. Trophy shops don't rely on that in order to succeed. If their business revolved around keeping secrets, then they would have gone out of business 30 years ago. There's nothing new in that industry. There hasn't been for a very long time, but they're still successful because it is a lot of work, and it does take effort to build and maintain those relationships with your community and people online, because that's still important too. A lot of people think that if they have an online business, they'll just sell things to a giant silhouetted crowd and they'll never hear from them again. And that's not how that works at all. This is a topic for another day. But, I think there's a lot to see when we see a trophy shop that is like a second generation or third generation business doing the same thing their parents and their grandparents did, the same way that they did it, in the same location, serving the same community, after everything else that's happened in the tech world over the last, a quarter of a decade. And they're still there and they're doing fine. So there's more to it than just a process, and we have to look at those other aspects of business, because if we don't look at it as a business and it's just a tech race, I mean, those are the people that are going to drop out first. Those people that are focused only on the process, only on the designs, only, that kind of stuff. The information is going to get out there. It's 2024. We have the internet. Okay? It's like, that's just shit spreads like wildfire. There aren't any secrets anymore, and you can't run a business revolved around keeping secrets. It just doesn't work. How are you ever supposed to sell a product without putting a design on a marketplace? That doesn't make any sense. So there's other things going on that I feel like aren't being addressed, and people don't want to rely on their, or I guess people don't want to acknowledge their inability to perform marketing and business tasks, and would rather try to hold on to their process or design secrets as long as possible so they don't have to improve in those other areas, because they don't want to. They want to laser stuff. They don't want to run a business. But you have
Definitely
to.
a good way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah.
On the
Makes sense.
alternative to that, I was thinking that people are going to want to burn stuff and not troubleshoot their hardware. So when you get a new laser, you don't want to do the timing. You don't want to do the offset adjustment. You don't want to do the delay timing. You don't want to do any of that. You don't want to troubleshoot power supply problems. You don't want to do whatever, right? But at the end of the day, you still have to upkeep your machine and tune all that stuff in to get a good product. And the people who are selling stuff on Etsy for pennies on the dollar, who aren't doing that stuff because they're not investing the time, because they don't have to justify that return on investment of time.
Yeah.
They aren't doing that, and they're selling a shit product.
Yeah.
And they're not going to get a lot of return sales.
Well, a lot of things too is it seems like people are afraid to kind of expand and do different things or learn different things about their machine. They learn like one thing, and then they run with it.
As long as they're the best that they can be at that might be okay. But I mean, you got to learn.
Maybe you're going to be really good at something else, right?
Right.
Found your
You could be.
Like if all you can do is dog tags or something or whatever, really, really well. I mean, that's only going to get you so far. And with so much stuff that you can do with a laser, I mean, I get where Alex is talking about the trophy shops, but I mean, there's really only so much you can do in that area.
I will say that I was asked to bid a job for baseball trophies for the end of year.
Yeah.
I did some pricing, and those things just come in pieces. I mean, I had no clue. I figured I could buy the tower, and it was all right. You want 3 tiers, you want 2 tiers, you want 1 tier for the different, first, second, third. No, you buy every pole.
Individual.
You got to buy the screws. You got to buy the bolts. You got to buy all the covers for the tiers. I'm like, no, that's okay. Yep. The trophy shop can keep that. So there is a place for that for sure.
But I'm just saying, as far as like trophy shops or rotary engravers, let's say, there's a limit per se on what you can do with those. Whereas with all the laser technology out there and the different types and things, I mean, it's almost limitless in a lot of ways as to what you can do. So I mean, it makes sense that people want to get on it because there is so much you can do with it. But when, like Kyle was saying about, setting up the machine properly, your timing, your backlash settings, your focuses, your whatever, people don't want to take the time to do that. And that's where a lot of the stuff in the groups come in. We're like, how do I do this? How do I do this? What do I need to do? What's wrong? Why ain't it working? Instead of trying to figure it out and learning from it so you can make yourself better. I hate to use the word spoon-fed, but they're basically trying to get spoon-fed information when,
you never learn. You never learn that way.
It's the whole, give a man a fish, he'll live for a day. Eat a man a fish, he'll live forever. Whatever it is, or eat forever. It's the same thing. And I think that's what turns a lot of people off is when you see stuff like that. I know we've all been there. I mean, but back years ago, we had to learn everything. Like we had to be the mechanic on it. We had to be the operator. We had to be the designer. We had to be everything.
Well, I mean, the YouTube, like laser everything didn't exist back then. I mean, House of Lasers didn't exist. There were so many different avenues that weren't available, and it was a trade secret. So we had to learn on our own through trial and error and lots of screwed up shit. You know, just figuring out how to do it. But there's something to be said about doing it that way and learning the ins and outs of your machine and the software.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we see a lot, just from a content production standpoint, is that some of the most popular content that we publish and that others publish on YouTube about lasers and laser engraving are guides where you go step by step by step from nothing to a finished sellable project, right? And I think a lot of the content that I like to produce, and a lot of the content that Kyle produces and Matt produces, isn't as popular as a lot of stuff that's out there on YouTube that you can find right now, because I feel like our videos focus more on like a critical thinking process and bringing fundamentals to the forefront so that you can take the lessons you've learned from those videos and apply them to a multitude of situations as you're using your laser and you're not glued to YouTube, you know, and you can remember, like, you know, how do speed and power and frequency interact with one another? You know what I mean? What are dirty optics going to do to your power density when you're using a gantry laser? Those are the kinds of lessons that I feel like are really important to teach, and they're difficult to get in front of people because that's not what they crave. You know, people are just great. They want project videos, and we do our share of project videos to stay relevant, but the really meaty laser everything episodes that are jam-packed with the stuff that's going to help you be successful are the ones that focus more on a critical thinking process and try to teach you how to teach yourself, rather than actually bringing a specific end goal to you, you know. And so that we struggle with that now every day when we're deciding what content to produce, because we are running a business, we do have to stay relevant, but also we're trying to help you, you know, even if we have to like jam it down your throat. So that's, you know, it's something we see all the time for sure.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of things. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, I mean, 100% doing support for Thunder, I see it, you know, and I get caught not wanting to answer. You know, I want to give the information. I don't want to answer it. I want you to read the article, and I want you to go through it on your own. So the next time that you have this problem, you know it backwards, forwards. You know, now you understand how it works and the technology and the reasons why you got to this position, and you can basically dig yourself out of this hole. So yeah, I struggle with that too, because I don't want to directly answer. I want people to do, you know, all these people, hey, how do I do a 360 tumbler, you know, a wrap on my rotary, and go give me the answer. No, I mean,
you need like 400 answers to lead you to that answer.
Right. And the first 300 are wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try like hell to make people make people work so that they learn.
Yeah, I'm all about helping people, but you know, just some of the questions, like if I see something, and like Chris was talking about, like when you see a post and it's already got like 30 comments on it within an hour, I'll just keep scrolling, because at that point, you know, whether someone told them good information or bad information,
they've already gone down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah,
right. It's answered, or they have 20 different things to try.
Chris, I'm concerned about how much deeper that room is in reality than it looks when you are just sitting in front of the camera. You just walked like a mile away. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. That was like you walked all the way down the yellow brick road to the Emerald City and stopped and grabbed something and walked back. That was nuts.
He's so short. The perspective has a greater effect.
Rough.
That door, with that door open on that 63, he's about as high as that door is.
That's true.
I'm sure you guys
That's
see
not a
this a
lie.
lot too. Is like a lot of the time when you see somebody asking a question in the community, or an email or a text or wherever you're getting your questions from, it doesn't really matter. But a lot of the time, the problem that they're having is usually caused by a multitude of things, and they probably ran into this before and didn't even know it. Like in your scanning offset adjust on a gantry, they don't even realize they have stair stepping on the edges of their engraves around the contours, and it's like, but now when they're doing like a powder coated tumbler and they're scanning across it, and they get these weird jaggies,
right?
It's a big problem now because it's like right up in their face. They don't notice it on wood.
No, yeah, on wood it's just completely obliterated, so it looks like a nice edge, but or a nicely faded edge.
Yeah, and a lot of the time they don't want the process to fix it. They just want the answer to fix this one problem.
Right.
Well, and that's
you're getting the whole process, baby. This is what you got.
Designed those crash courses too. When we did those crash courses, was to like make sure that all those little bricks are stacked the right way in your mind before you start trying to do stuff. And like it seems so tedious when you're doing it because you're like, I just want to laser something. You know, I just want to like go. I want to make something. I want to maybe even be creative. But like if you don't have these just like configuration things sorted and kind of your ducks in a row before you get started, instead of making things, you're just going to be spending twice as much time doubling back to the fundamentals and the machine configuration over and over and over again each time you recognize a new problem, you know? So if I could give any advice, and I don't know how we got on this topic, but if I could give any advice to someone feeling that way, it would be like, go through your machine config, watch one of the crash courses, you know what I mean? Like read support articles and make sure that things are, you know, you can't do long division before you can do regular addition and subtraction, right? Or algebra before you can do basic math. You have to do things in order, because if you just jump right to the complex, I mean, how many lines of code and how many moving parts does it take to make these things actually work? And how little of an understanding does the average user have about any of the incredible magic that's happening inside of the machines before they start attempting to use them? You know, it's just it's a very, very, very deep iceberg, and we're all chilling on the little tippity top, and you gotta see where it's coming from, you know.
So kind of getting back on track.
What track? There's no track.
Right? Yeah.
We're ATV off-road fury, man. We're going for it.
Oh God, I ain't seen that in a long time. So getting back to years and years and years ago, before lasers were big mainstream, you know, one of the things that made it so unique was the fact that the costs were so high for what you got. I mean, I remember I had a China blue and white. I think that was my first laser I ever had.
Kyle's got one in the back of him.
And that it was similar to what his
that
was.
was a special one. That one's a piece of crap.
About that last night. But I had it, and when I got it, it cost me like $8,000, and it was just a 50 or 60 watt laser, just as bare bones as you could possibly imagine, much like a OM Tech or something like that. But I mean, they were $8,000. I mean, and you had to import it from China. Like, you had to import it. There was no U.S. sellers. There was no, you know, Thunder Laser. There was no Boss or Eon or any of that stuff that was here that could handle that stuff for you and get it to your door within 30 days or whatever. You know, you had to work to get it. And I think that's what kind of made it unique back then, is because not everybody could afford it. Not everybody had the time to mess with it.
You expected not to be able to go on Facebook. You expected not to have a manual. You expected to have to learn that shit. You're on your own.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to figure out how to do it.
I mean, you might have a piece of paper that said, "Hey, here's your laser. This is what it's got in it. Have fun."
I remember driving down to the airport to pick up my first one and paying duty fees and shit.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you guys know Michael Mullins, friend of the show, Laser Engraving 911. When we got started, he found the guy that was selling them in the US at the time. This is about the same time. And it was a company called LMT out of Michigan. You're familiar with them.
I've heard of that.
He got a 30-watt LMT Dominator, and it was $50,000. And that was the thing you could drive to Michigan and buy, and you got a day's worth of training, and then you put it in the back of your truck and you drove it home. And that was what was available here at the time. Just to share a little story, because there were a handful. Companies here are still manufacturing things in the US, and the laser technology was used for that purpose. But those were their only clients. They were not selling to people running businesses out of their garages. You know what I mean? Those businesses were targeting other big corporate entities. So, you know, $50,000 for them and $50,000 for you are very, very different things. And now people are going to scoff at that. I mean, you guys did. You chuckled. You got a chuckle out of that. It was $50,000. And it was a 30-watt IPG source in that thing. And it's just like outlandish to think about that now. I mean, another one of the things that we got pretty early on before they were really starting to spread, everybody's still doing plasma and water jet. And Michael bought a Rose Graphics fiber laser cutter. It was a 1.5 kilowatt fiber laser cutter. And if I go on AliExpress right now, I can find one with a like 4 foot by 4 foot bed. It's going to cost me around 32 grand. And when Michael bought that, it was $150,000. It had a Raycus source. It had a continuous wave Raycus source. This shit is just cheaper. It's not, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, like huge factors cheaper than they ever were.
People just don't understand how good we got it now with that stuff. And you know, we don't expect to, just like, you know, generations before, oh, you don't know how good you got it, yada yada, whatever. But you know, it is a big difference. And that I mean, even the peripherals that were around back then with the rotaries, like the only thing you had was a chuck, you know, and it was a shitty one at that, at best.
The infamous hot dogs.
You had the Chinese rollers and stuff like that. You had the hot dog rollers, which were really good. But you got to think too is, you know, about 6 years ago, you know, the whole cup market as a whole just took off. Like they're coming out with so many different styles and shapes and sizes and everything. It's just it's crazy. So I mean, of course, they didn't keep up with things, and you know, they kind of fell by the wayside with you know, like Rotoboss and other companies that make rotaries and stuff. You know, it's the same kind of process, but like when people get a laser now and they complain about the little stuff that they complain about, I can't help but laugh when I see these posts. And it's like, and not laughing at them, it's just laughing knowing what we went through years ago when we started. And
yeah, I mean, do you know what you had to do in the past?
Yeah.
And you're complaining about this?
Like, you had to learn. Like, I know I'm not claiming, or I know Chris isn't claiming to be like one of the first ever. You know, Russ Sadler, he's probably the godfather of lasers as far as the in-depth knowledge and stuff that he does. But like, we started doing YouTube and Facebook kind of tutorials and helping people and talk, you know, kind of not doing podcasts or anything, but kind of just doing stuff to help people and show people how to do things. But for us, we didn't have that. Like, we had nothing. You know, we were lucky if we could find any kind of. I don't even think YouTube wasn't even a thing back then, was it?
To look back at it, Russ was actually probably one of the first ones when I started doing photo engraving. He was the first ones. He was the only thing I could find really on YouTube. And everything was brand specific. So, you know, I helped as soon as I started to learn more and more and I understood the technology, I was helping that brand develop, you know, new users coming on board. Oh, you have an issue. Well, here's your answer. And I contributed to the problem that Facebook has today.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually really interesting that you say that, because I was sitting here thinking that too. We really created our own problem
We did for
by
sure.
by helping democratize this technology. That's very much our, and I'm using a capital O, our fault. And also, it's, I think we're a little privileged from the position that we're talking shit about it, because we would not have these jobs that we have right now had we not democratized that technology and
Yeah.
generated this massive population of people that now needs help. They may not know the help that they need, but they need it because we introduced them to it. I think that's because we are just nerds. I think we're just big fat nerds, and so that kind of stuff interested us, and it was worth the insurmountable amount of time and effort it took to process that data and turn it into something edible, you know?
Right.
And most people aren't good at that. And that's something that we have to remember when we're doing our jobs, you know, is that a lot of people, when we see the Chinglish manual, you know, and we're reading it and we get it and we can just apply it, like 95% of people cannot do that. And that's our job, you know, is to kind of like translate that literally and figuratively into pieces that not only teach people how to do something, but serve them when they're working. And that kind of comes back to like the, you know, the critical thinking stuff. That's the hardest skill I think any of us have to teach, but it's so vital that we do, because that's where you're going to see like, okay, yes, we took the first steps. We did this translation, we're going to call it, you know, and now we can sit here and translate every text, but we also have to help translate. We have to help teach how to translate. So when people face things that they haven't been given a translation for, I'm using that term really loosely, they're able to at the very least start working on it on their own, you know? But it's a good problem to have, because this is a great job. I love my job. So, you know, it can be certainly frustrating sometimes, but like, I don't want to be doing anything else for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you.
That's true.
And it if you read anything about me in the past, I felt like it was an obligation because I understood. You know, oddly enough, the landscaper guy that had no clue and entered into the market, you know, I saw a laser, I just bought it, you know, just because I wanted to try it, see if I could do anything. But I understood it, and I felt it as an obligation, because I understood it, to make that translation to the layman. You know, I'm not super technical. You know, I'm not going to tell you a whole bunch of, you know, crazy figures and calculations, but I can show you how to use a machine and make cool shit with it. So yeah, I see the point. And
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, that's one of the things I think that helps, at least for me, like helping other people helps me. Like every time I talk to somebody with a problem or a question or whatever, you know, I'm always looking for knowledge. I'm always looking to give people knowledge. And I think part of like what drives me is actually learning things from these interactions with people in different circumstances. So it's not like a one-way street kind of thing. You know, yes, I'm helping somebody, but I'm also hopefully learning something from it to better myself, because, you know, and even watching Facebook and YouTube and things like that, you know, you see people doing some crazy stuff. You know, I'm not the person to go in there and be like, oh, how'd you do that? You know, I'm the kind of person that's like, oh, let me figure that out. Like, let me figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what a lot of people should be doing, versus trying to be told. Because I mean, in the end, it's going to make them a better user, a better.
what are your settings?
Yeah,
what are your settings
around, and it's going to help the community grow.
One of the coolest things that I think Kyle and I have gotten to see in our time at Laser Everything, and I'm sure Kyle will have input on this, is we've literally kind of like, I mean, the best thing about Laser Everything, the people come for the videos, but they stay for the Laser Everything community. Our community is wicked. And it's because we trained like 5 or 6 people to think like us, and they are out there like on the front lines teaching people how to think like them, and it's spread so far. I mean, I have so many names I could shout out right now of people in our community that are doing what we do in a video once, like every day, trying to kind of clone themselves. You know, I feel like Kyle and I like stepped in and we created like a small little league of like Kyle and Alex clones, and now they're out there creating their clones, and those people are creating their clones, and those people hang around in our community. I'm sure you've probably seen something similar in yours, where like now, you know, you see a question and you go to answer it, but like 5 other people have already said exactly what you were going to say, and you're like, oh, that guy's got it, he beat me to it, you know. And it's you know that like, sure, like this seed started with you, but like now it's spreading, and I think that took a long time to establish, but it's definitely one of the most satisfying things that I've gotten to witness, because now it's like orders of magnitude more helpful to be a part of our community than it was early on, because we have so many people kind of like that have that way of thinking down, and it's continuing to spread, and that's been really, really cool.
Well, people like us are kind of like the fall guys. Like if they can't figure it out or someone can't help them figure it out, like we're the people that they come to get, I don't know, better information, or I don't know,
the tier 2 escalation, right?
Yeah, we're like the tier 2, yeah.
Oh no.
But you know, it's cool, but also like in these Facebook posts and stuff like that, where people have like 20 or 30 comments already, and a lot of times like, I'm not gonna be able to add anything to the conversation, or you know,
or you scroll down and you see the correct answer and you're like,
yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of times like I don't
faith in
join
humanity restored,
because you know they've already been told all
Kyle's
this
got
different
me.
stuff. Like my favorite thing is like they put a picture, and I've mentioned this many times before. They put a picture up, says, "Why is my laser doing this?" Okay, I'll play this game. Like, okay, what laser you got? What are your settings? You know, nobody asks questions, and those are the comments I completely stay away from, because you know you have all these people. I've had people get a hold of me after the fact that have almost completely tore their machine apart, took mirrors out, adjusted belts, pulled whatever off their machine, and they get a hold of me because I'll make a comment like, "Hey, do you still have a problem? If so, let me know. I can help you out." And they'll get a hold of me. And it's like, "Oh, thank God," you know. And
Jason's like, "Did you enable rotary and light burn?"
Well, no, it's like people send them down this rabbit hole. They've done all these things to their machine that was not necessary at all, and they're so frustrated at that point. And you know, I hate to see it because it's sad, because that turns a lot of people off, because they think, oh shit, you know, I'm never going to be able to figure this out, because I had all these people tell me this is the problem and it won't fix it, when actually it wasn't a problem, because people don't ask questions. And that's
the base fundamentals.
It's like with a picture that says, "Hey, what's wrong? Why is my laser doing this?" And then all these people start, "Your belt's loose, your mirror's loose, your bearings are shot, your bed's out of level," you know, without even asking a single question about what kind of machine it is. Like they could be going off in gantry land, and they're actually using a freaking galvo or something, or a diode.
Yeah,
you know?
The pre-qualifiers suck online for sure.
Nobody asked that. But on the flip side of that, nobody's putting that information out, which they need to. So if you're listening to this, please put details into your questions and stuff on social media, so we can help you.
Yeah, your settings, you know, the machine that you're using, etc., etc.
What you did to troubleshoot already.
Nothing. I posted on
Don't
Facebook.
lie about it.
Yeah. My biggest thing, like for rotary specifically, is like, oh, my cup's slipping. Oh, I put a roll of quarters inside of my cup, and I don't have a problem, or I counterweighted or whatever. When turns out, like I just had this one lady, she had to have done a ton of cups because her rotary is completely covered in dust and dirt. And she put a post out saying that she's having issues with the image squishing or creating like a thick line where it's just kind of sitting in one spot. And people were putting out all this information and everything. And I messaged her on the side. I'm like, hey, contact me. And we kind of discussed the circumstances behind it. And as soon as I saw the picture, I'm like, have you cleaned the wheels? So I got an email from her, or Facebook message, I don't remember. But anyways, I got a message from her yesterday or today, and she's like, hey, I cleaned up the wheels and it works perfect now. I'm like, and people were telling her all this stuff, check your belts, check your whatever, put some quarters in it, put a counterweight, do this, that, and the other. And it was just something simple as like clean your wheels, like keep your machine clean.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword too, because it's great that people want to help, but if you don't know what you're talking about yet, shut your mouth for a second.
That's what I get to if people have been using a laser for a month or 3 months or whatever, and they're like the expert. They know everything about it, or they heard it on YouTube.
The quarter trick gets me giggling every time. And you know what? Later last week, I should say, I actually came across somebody who had a Talon, or not a Talon, but a Talon-like rotary.
Yeah.
And they were saying how it just, they couldn't get whatever they had chucked into it to stay put. And somebody in the comments suggested throwing a roll of quarters or like a couple ball bearings in there to weigh it down. And I'm like, it's slipping because it doesn't have anything holding it up in the back and you're adding more weight. Why is that a good thing?
Yeah. I mean, again, and that's the hard thing too, is because at least for me, like when I see posts about rotary stuff, unless they have a picture with it and I know what it is, it's hard because like, okay, what machine, what rotary do you have? What type of rotary do you have? What have you done? What haven't you done? Those kind of things. It's really hard. And it's the same thing with lasers, because we have so many lasers out there that are available. It's hard to like Alicia's page, the Laser Lounge. It's a conglomerate of everything laser related pretty much, and even with Alex's site and stuff, it's a conglomerate of so many different lasers. It's hard to just, like, before you knew it was a CO2, like you didn't have to worry. Okay, do you have a galvo? Now you have to be specific. Is it a fiber, a UV, a CO2, a diode? You have to be more specific, and it's harder to help in situations like that. But I don't know. I don't think there's an easy solution for it. I mean, I know Alex, you guys do a lot with different lasers and showing off different equipment and things like that, which is awesome. But it's one of those things, is you're gonna miss somebody, you're gonna miss something. You can't possibly cover it all, at least not in the short term. So it's hard to keep up with the technology, which is kind of what this was about. The advancements in technology have grown so fast. I mean, just in the past year, you got Thunder with their new machine, the Bolt series. You got Eon with their new Red Line. You got Boss with their hybrid router laser. Who else? X-Tool with their several new machines, and plus the new one, I think it's X-Tool, right? The one with the conveyor belt and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, the F1 Ultra. Yeah.
So you got that, and you got OM Tech coming out with new stuff. You got all these companies coming out with all this new stuff, and it's hard to keep up on, especially if none of us have used it. Like I've always prided myself is I won't interject myself with something I'm not familiar with, and that's why I've owned so many machines over the years. But it's just getting increasingly difficult for people like us. I mean, I know, Alex, you've had a lot of different stuff.
I mean, we're at Laser Everything. We're basically a third-party support company.
Yeah.
More or less. That's what we are. People come to us to get support. A lot of the times it's free. Sometimes they pay for it. It doesn't. It's not. That's not really relevant. But like, you have to have this. You have this constant exposure to everything. And I think part of what has made us successful in trying to help people with so many different kinds of machines that have so much different technology in them is focusing on the things that make all of these different machines the same. Because in our experience, I think, and I don't know, in my experience, I don't speak for you, Kyle. A lot of the things that people struggle with lasers are things that all lasers have in common. So just regardless of the wavelength or the delivery method, you really got two big groups. You've got your gantry lasers and you've got your galvo lasers, and the things people need help with those two groups of things are generally the same. So focusing on diagnosing and rectifying those issues is a really, really good buckshot that hits the vast majority of what you need to hit. It's very rare that somebody comes to me with a problem with their UV laser that has anything to do with it being a UV laser. That one particular detail is not almost ever relevant. It's more about the machine itself. And while a lot of them have differences or perks or novel little doodads and things that make them special, the vast majority of lasers are big metal boxes with a couple consistent moving parts inside. And once you start to understand that, it makes it far easier to start getting people to help you diagnose their issues and being able to track down what's really wrong with them. So, and that's a skill that we've had to develop over the last 10 years or whatever, that I've been in this business, is finding out what makes all of these things something that we're interested in as people that talk about lasers, because those similarities are where the vast majority of the issues and the solutions lie, I think.
No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Segment, compartmentalize it, and it pretty much covers a wide selection of things. So
yeah.
But so we're getting close to time. We got about 3 minutes. We can go over a little bit if you guys got time, but
a lot of questions today either. So
I'm chilling, but if we hit 9 o'clock and I lean back and hold my microphone, that's not on me. So I'm just gonna go horizontal.
Yeah, if anybody's got any questions or anything, I mean, we got some people that have been watching throughout. If you got questions, that's what we're here for. We're just kind of rambling and covering the general topic of what this was about. And we're about ready to get into kind of the closing remarks about what how we see the laser community moving forward. So if you got any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll go ahead and address them. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this down or winding this down. And so my question to you guys would be, so knowing what we all know from our experience over the past decade, at least, let's say, and the way things are now, how do you guys see the laser community, or not the community as a whole, but just the laser industry looking, let's say, 2 to 5 years from now? Like, how do you see things going? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Is it going to stagnate? Kind of what are your thoughts on that?
I kind of think, well, a lot of what you guys were talking about earlier, where everything kind of gets democratized and narrowed down into more consumer-friendly products, kind of like how 3D printing has, where you can get something off the shelf now that'll just print. You don't even have to tune it anymore. I'm sure that will kind of be the direction that the market will go in the next 5 years, because obviously less maintenance, less tuning means happier customers, right? But I think it's a lot of what Alex said before is kind of going to hold true with that, I think, where it's going to take time for those things to balance out. The industry hasn't really come up with a consistent form factor that every customer is happy with, or even half of the customers are happy with. It's either too small or too big. There is no happy medium kind of thing. And honestly, I think that's just going to be how it is, because not everybody has a 200 square foot shop to stick a big old gantry in and load it with stuff to sell. But at the same time, the F1 users of the world from Xtool, where you have 100 millimeters of usable space and you can fit it on the edge of your desk next to your computer, it's just too small for some people too. But I feel like there's going to be a small, medium, large option from a bunch of brands, and they'll hopefully learn to narrow down their options, not just list 800 of the same machine on Alibaba. When you go to some brands and they're just like, we have 8,000 of these. And you're like, cool, what's the difference? And they're like, nothing. All right, thanks.
Different colors.
Yeah, like it's just wild. So I feel like the more the industry understands that they can narrow down a lot of just the chaos and just list, like, even if you're adding accessories, those can be listed as accessories rather than separate machines entirely.
Yeah.
I think we'll see it kind of go the same way as like 3D printing has, being a kind of a related industry in that way.
Once in a while, you might see a fringe company come out with something a little better or something like that.
Yeah, as one company kind of comes out with something cool that everybody wants to jump on board with, a bunch of other companies will probably figure out their own way around doing something similar, and it'll go tit for tat with the bigger companies, and it'll trickle down to the smaller companies and the people doing it in their backyard.
Y'all picking on the laser pecker. Why?
I know you
want to talk the laser pecker. There's a right tool for every job.
What do you think, Alex, before you doze off to Wonderland?
Yeah, no. Doze off. I got a long night ahead of me, bro. I'm doing databasing right now. If you take anything away from this episode, I would implore you to consider, we've been talking about the history of lasers tonight, was kind of the theme of the episode. Look at the history of other tech that's already been democratized, and try to learn something from that. You owning a laser is not a business anymore. It used to be, and that is no longer the case. And if you want to have any opportunity to be successful going forward, surviving the saturation that we found ourselves in, you need to come up with a business idea in which you can use the laser as a tool to accomplish a goal or create a product.
Yep.
That will be your business, not ownership of the laser. That no longer makes you unique or novel or an individual. And so it's now on you to craft a business around the tool you've found yourself passionate for using. Right? I think that will be the challenge for...
Right. You are the creator.
Yeah.
And the tools that you use are what define.
Yeah, exactly. And multidiscipline is going to be huge too, as it has been, being able to use different technologies together to create a final product, something that I struggle with a lot. That's very difficult. I'm not speaking of that lightly, but being multidisciplinary and being able to use a multitude of technologies and techniques and methods to create something special, that alongside the fact that you have honed in on a business idea that uses your laser as a tool, and the laser is not the business in and of itself, will be critical for those who succeed to accept going into the next 5 years. It's going to be massive. So that would be my advice / foreboding warning to you guys out there. I really, really, really think that's going to be vital going forward.
I agree. It's kind of like hand tools. If anybody uses hand tools, like Craftsman and Snap-on used to be it. Now you got Pittsburgh, Icon, Cobalt, all these. So everybody's got them, and the laser community is kind of the same way. It's what you do with them or how you use them is what's going to set you apart. Kind of like what you just said, Alex. But yeah, I got one question here. We're not. Can you talk more about 10 years, 5 years, and now quality same in that time? So we can touch on that real quick. My opinion on that is, 10 years ago, everything was made in China. Like the quality control wasn't there. It was all regulated and controlled and basically done by China, except for, I don't know how long Epilogue and all them have been around, but for the most part, everything you had was China. There was no U.S. quality control like there is with the U.S.-based companies that we have now, I don't think. So the quality of the machines, the components, they have advanced, obviously, with technology, different stepper motors and drivers and controllers and all that stuff, which has pretty much been the same. Arita's pretty much owned the business since as long as I can remember. But like the quality, no, it wasn't is the same as it is now. Some of the lasers are still the same as they were before. They just got a new name on them. But a lot of companies are starting to innovate, like X-Tool and again Eon, Boss, Thunder, all these guys that are big in the market. So the quality has kind of followed the technology, I guess, or the times. I mean, even so much as just, for instance, rotaries. When we first started out, all our rotaries were completely plastic, cut from acrylic and 3D printed. And now everything is all metal, machine milled, anodized, all that stuff. So we've kind of, and much like the same aspect, I think goes, and correct me if you guys feel differently, but I think the lasers have kind of done the same thing for the most part, more large in part to the fact that there's so many competitors out there now. They're kind of forced to up the game in some way via quality, precision, details, things like that, that I think have made things better from what they were 10 years ago leading up to now. So I don't know if you guys have any input on that at all.
Yeah, actually, this is like, oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, you mentioned earlier the 30-watt laser that costs $50,000, which now you could probably get for $2.
Literally.
Yeah. And now you have light burn support, or light burn if you have the right controller card, you're good to go. I mean, between functionality, the cost, and build quality, I think things have changed exponentially compared to the way they were 10 years ago, at least.
Yeah.
5 years ago, we were probably on the cusp of the change, and now we're seeing crazy prices, crazy features. Yeah, it's a good time to be alive.
This is just a tiny bit aside to what we're talking about, and it's something I feel really passionate about, and I could do an hour-long episode on this topic with you guys. But do you remember Oriental Trading Company? It's a little magazine. You get it. It's full of fucking inflatable flamingos and fucking party poppers and shit.
Yep.
That was Chinese manufacturing in 2004. And that is not the manufacturing in China in 2024. China R&D and research and innovation and development has exploded and surpassed the capabilities of many, many places across the world. And it's still absolutely saturated with garbage. Don't get me wrong. But the companies that are running this industry right now are innovating the technologies that are making this democratization of this tech possible. That R&D does not belong to some American company in a shed somewhere you've never heard of. That is JPT pushing the bill. That is Recce pushing the bill. You know what I mean? SPT. Those guys are like seriously advanced companies now, and they're doing stuff that we haven't seen anywhere else in the world. So I would not in 2024 advise you to discount a company manufacturing goods in China just for the fact that they're manufacturing goods in China. It's a serious threat to American manufacturing, actually, and we're in for a wild next 10 years if things keep changing and evolving at the pace that they currently are. And that's, again, we can have a whole separate conversation about this another night. I know that's a pitfall right there, but the goddamn things are looking really impressive for you guys in the future. So,
but a side question to that for you, Alex, or anybody, do you think that's because of our quality control standards? Like, I know for me personally, like my manufacturer is in China, but I hold them to a higher quality standard than what they would do if they were making the same machine. So do you think that the U.S. based laser companies that have taken the reins of probably 70%, let's say, of the world market, do you think that has played into their quality standards over there and the product that they're putting out now?
In the US, we're used to this whole like designed in California, manufactured in China kind of thing, right? Where we see these blueprints and designs for chips and stuff being created here and then sent with a spec to a Chinese manufacturing company where the product is then manufactured, then it comes back, it gets QA'd, and then they import it. We're used to seeing that. The line that we have to draw, the difference between what you're talking about and what I'm talking about, is that when I'm talking about manufacturing, what I'm really talking about is component manufacturing, not OEM manufacturing. So OEM would be like Thunder Laser, right? So they're buying components from 50, 60, 70 different companies, and they're building a machine with it. The process of building the machine and passing that through a quality assurance system that's effective both in the East and in the West is very different than the manufacture and design of the components that are being used to build that OEM product, which is entirely in the hands of the Chinese companies. And that manufacturing process is improving. So they're different work. Chris, you probably kind of know what I'm talking about here because you're with Thunder. So I mean, like, just the building blocks that we are making these things out of and holding to certain standards, those individual building blocks are rapidly improving. And that is something that China's been doing really well lately.
So one of the things that I was going to add to the way that I see it going is RF. I see China, or at least Thunder, probably going to be putting high power RFs into some of these machines that you see the CO2 in. Longevity, no issues, no halos,
probably better shipping stability too.
Shipping, no kidding.
They're heavier, but they don't shatter.
Yeah,
they don't shatter.
That's a really, really good example is like RF tube manufacturing, right? And design. Davi is going to start giving companies like Coherent that have been king forever a run for their money. And it's not because somebody in the US is pointing and telling them what to do. It's because someone's got a fire under their ass and they want to compete with the American manufacturing of components that have traditionally only ever been manufactured in the US.
Look at the Bolt, for example. Yeah. Who would have thought for $5,000 you can get an RF tube?
Yeah.
In a machine of that quality. I mean, that when they announced
the
RF
tube alone, let alone the machine.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, when they announced that, we were all like, but how? I mean, are you going to be losing your ass on it for the first couple of years, or how are you making that happen? But we're in talks with a Radeon. We're in talks with Kurt. Which one? SPT.
Simrad
Coherent.
makes tubes.
Coherent. I mean, I can tell you that you're probably going to see a 63-inch machine with probably 150 RF tube in it.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that is because the Chinese manufacturing improvements have enabled companies like Davi to compete with things like the Coherent J series, right? Where you're seeing 100, 200 watt RF tubes that used to only be available in manufacturing. And a great example of that is one of our longtime partners, Mactron. They're a pretty big manufacturer in China. They have just switched from using coherent tubes to comparable Davi Chinese manufactured tubes. And until they had made that switch, they were literally buying coherent sources that were manufactured in the US, importing them into China, building the machine, and then exporting it to the US.
We have those though. We
Yeah.
have those too. Yeah, I mean, I've got one behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, and why? You know,
and that's what I'm saying. So I think that's going to be something over, especially the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of companies around the world, not just in the US, Germany too. IPG is taking it really hard right now. They're going to be facing some stiff competition from natively designed Chinese products, and that's something that I'd be keeping an eye on, because that's changing, and costs are only going down on top of that. So
the other piece of that too, just adding to the quality and kind of economies of scale, there's tens of thousands. There must be tens of thousands of laser manufacturers on Alibaba that are assembling machines, right? And the quality of that is so varying, where you have this guy in his garage, which we all start somewhere, right? But you have this guy in his garage who just has $2,000 to spend on a laser, and 6 to 12 months ago, that was probably a fire trap, because the company probably didn't do the QC on it. They didn't wire it up in a good way. They probably pinched wires in the thing when they closed it up, and they probably didn't run that before they threw it in a crate and shipped it across the sea. But now, like, a $2,000 laser is attainable. It's not even like something to raise your nose at. Like, it's not a big deal to hear about that anymore.
No, I agree.
But there are companies like Maxtron and Wisely, and there's a bunch of them that they raise the bar for quality, and they stick around on services like Alibaba and AliExpress and their own site, where you're going to get kicked off of those marketplaces if you're not keeping your customers happy, or if you're not resolving problems in a timely manner and not forcing the marketplace to get involved. Whereas that's why you're seeing, like, every other laser manufacturer with a random user tag with 3,000 numbers behind it, because they didn't have an account long enough to modify their storefront name, popping up to try and sell a laser for $1,500. It's just raising the bar. So the companies that are sticking around for the last year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, the longer they stick around, the higher the bar gets raised for those companies that are just trying to make a quick buck and get booted off a marketplace.
Yep.
Silence.
So.
No, I'm dozing off. He's over here just like, who's got the.
So I agree. I mean, considering that the U.S. market is about 70% of Thunder China sales, we kind of drive the technology, and we told them we don't want low power galvos. We don't want non-compatible galvo machines that can't run light burn for right now, you know. So they hear us, and they've changed the way that they're designing some of their stuff because of our market, America. I mean, we want high power. We want, we want to destroy stuff. So they're listening for sure.
And I think a lot of laser companies are listening as a whole, and that's why we're seeing such a jump in things. Plus, you know, like X-Tool, or I don't even hear this anymore too much, is Glowforge. You know,
Who?
they were so comfortable in the market that they were in, you know, and same thing with like the bigger companies, like I talked about with Epilogue and stuff. You know, they're so comfortable in the lane that they were in, which is fine. But when they're missing out on a big market share of the industry, you know, you kind of wonder what they're thinking. One, but I think with all the big players starting to get more involved, I think it's driving it. And to Alex's point about the manufacturing, I mean, probably 80 to 90% of all lasers are made in China. As far as the manufacturers go,
and like 95% of their parts, even if they're not made in China.
And Kyle, to your point, you said assembled.
Yeah.
There's a cabinet maker that makes all the cabinets.
But that's the thing, though, too, is the traditional. It's made in China. I don't want that junk. Like with our quality standards and other people's quality standards that are in the laser industry and things like that. I mean, holding their feet to the fire with the stuff that they're making for us, even though, yes, it is technically made in some way, shape, or form in China, with our inputs and quality standards, I mean, that's what makes it good, I think. And like with Thunder, for instance, I don't know a whole lot about the other companies, but like from the manufacturer to your doorstep, like it doesn't get touched. I mean, they've refined their skill and their manufacturing to a point where they literally put it on a boat and it comes to your door and it's not touched until you open the box.
I will say that they take our input, but the quality control on these damn things, that's 100% them. There's somebody there that is OCD about wiring and schematics and about all of that stuff. And you get it all. I mean, there's not too many manufacturers that are going to give you the schematics of their machines and say, here you go. If you have a problem, every wire has a label on it. You can fix it on your own, and we can tell you how to trace it.
So Alex,
yeah, it's insane.
Just a quick question for you, Alex. You guys do a lot of different stuff. You use a lot of different lasers, a lot of different manufacturers. And as far as I know, you're not really beholden to a lot of them. I mean, you might be to some of them, but in your experience in regards to the question about the quality and how you see it, then and now, how have you seen things change as it relates to that kind of stuff with the machines that you've used?
Yeah, I mean, so we call ourselves laser agnostic over at Laser Everything. We try to get everything in front of us, you know what I mean, and put our hands on as much as possible. And I think that there's a marketing shift that's happening, and there is a manufacturing shift that's happening. And the manufacturing shift we already talked about. Yes, the machines are improving overall as machines, but I think it's due to an improvement in the component manufacturing. The things that we're building these machines with are getting better. The drivers are getting better, right? The motors are getting better. The lasers themselves are getting better. And so we're seeing that. But the other thing that's going on is a marketing shift. The laser industry that we are experiencing right now is a generation or two after a generation of laser machines that were designed and developed in China for Chinese customers. And China's been going through a massive manufacturing revolution. They make everything. 90% of the shit in my room right now was made in China. And I'm sure that a very large number of it has some kind of laser mark on it, whether it's a barcode or some kind of serial number or something. The back of my monitors, the pads on my little mixer over here. I mean, all of it. Those were marked in China by Chinese companies doing manufacturing that has nothing to do with lasers. And so those companies that were doing the manufacturing to make all of this crap in this room, they were buying lasers long before we were, so that they could get their manufacturing facilities up and running. And now that China has seen that there is an interest in this industry in the Western market, in the US specifically, they now have to shift gears and take the core technology that they've been building for manufacturing clients and turn that into something that small businesses, entrepreneurs, medium-sized businesses can actually afford and use effectively and efficiently. There's a reason that EasyCAD 2 has existed and been sold with these machines since literally 1997. That's how old that software is. It's because once it was instituted, it sat on an assembly line in a manufacturing plant and marked 800 billion parts of something before it eventually got thrown in the trash. That's just the world that this tech is coming from. So now that they're turning their head and they're looking at the West and they're trying to sell these products that they've been making for a long time to the West and to the United States, that marketing tactic has to change wildly, because what we found so difficult to consume as nerds when we got in on this early, right, was a manufacturing product. It was a product that was built for factories to help them produce things. And we are not factories. We are individuals, right? We are small businesses. We are entrepreneurs. We're side hustles. And so we're right, I think, dead smack, and this goes along with the democratization of the technology that we're talking about. We're right dead smack in the middle of a paradigm shift in the marketing of this technology. And the marketing has everything to do with how a machine looks, what software it's running on its front end that users are interacting with, not factory workers when they check it once a month to make sure that the fly marking is still doing what it's supposed to be doing. You know, like it's a very, very, very different landscape, and they're just starting to adjust now. That's why you see like these companies called Xtool. Xtool didn't just apparate out of nowhere. Xtool is made up of a bunch of software and hardware engineers that worked at companies that made lasers for manufacturing. And now they have come together because they see profit in using the technology that they know to create products for consumers and small businesses. And that's kind of the crux of it is that we're in the middle of a shift, and that's why they're so warm to hearing your feedback. You know what I mean? When you tell them like, we want this, not that, you know, we see a need for this needs to be better. What they're hearing is this is what the West and United States consumer and small business market requires. And so they absorb that like a sponge, and you're going to see that kind of revision in their product history as things go forward and things become more Westernized. And it's not because it's Westernized, it's just because we are cushy and don't live in a country that revolves around manufacturing anymore. So we're not used to seeing that kind of tech. And so that's what makes it difficult for small businesses and consumers to work with the kind of first and second gen laser products that we started seeing when they started coming overseas. And now it's shifting to be more user friendly for an individual. So there's a lot at play. There's a lot of variables. It's very dynamic.
So do you guys, any of you guys, do you see anything in the laser market that could be detrimental to either the growth or the continued kind of trajectory that we're kind of on now? You know, any pitfalls, any things that could potentially cause things to turn about, so to speak?
I think that with the costs being driven down with the economies of scale, so basically instead of like a couple thousand factories needing 5 or 10 lasers to get their production workload under control, now we have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people wanting galvos across the world that are just doing their own thing. That drives the price down, right? That's what we're seeing these days. Yep. But the downside to that is now we're starting to see mixing of like factories that are putting out quality product and not putting out fire nest traps of wiring versus a company that's just throwing something together, ripping the money out of their account and hoping that, you know, buyer protection doesn't kick in before they get their deposit. I think, and that's kind of with every industry, right? But right now there's so many companies that are flooding into the market with that just don't care, and they know they're not going to last. I think they're going to treat it as a cash grab. And I think that's where a lot of the more set in stone longevity based companies are gonna be there to help the community. But the problem is that's gonna sour it for a lot of the people that get smashed by that.
Yeah.
Which is a short-term problem, right? That problem won't last forever. That's something that's happening now and will end, because it literally cannot go on forever. Those companies will fail, or they'll get in trouble, or they'll run out of money, or they'll go buy their yacht and fucking they'll be gone, and that'll be that. But they won't be in the market forever. We hardly see that with 3D printing and vinyl cutting now. There's very few options, and they're all rock solid. If I told you I wanted to buy a 3D printer and I closed my eyes and I clicked the I feel lucky button on Google, like chances are whatever I get, like it will be serviceable. It may not be the best on the market, but it will be serviceable. There's very little trash out there anymore. So I totally agree with you, Kyle, but I think it's a very near future issue, and it's not going to be a long-term thing.
I think that's going to be like the next year.
What would you warn consumers about with stuff like that? Because like I said, you guys deal with a lot of stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because you have a vast knowledge that we don't with machines that we necessarily might not. But and you see more trends because you're talking to different companies and things like that we're not necessarily. But so and I know you have a lot of resources out there. You get a lot of videos about different types and what you recommend and so on. And I've heard it from people before. Oh, I got this because, Alex recommended it, or Matt, or whoever, but what would you say to people, knowing what you know and what you just said, to help people kind of navigate the flooded market of high quality stuff and then just stuff to make a quick buck and hit the road kind of, how would you kind of help people, or what would you say to people to help navigate that?
People go to college for 4 years to learn how to do things hundreds of times easier than what we're trying to do here with nothing.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself some tools in order to identify red flags. You just have to, whether that is being able to think critically about a company's history, right? How long have they been around? How many reviews do they have? Are their customers happy with their products? Basic things like that, to being able to physically identify things on a machine that signify that this is a poor quality product. That could be something as simple as getting a machine in, opening it up. Open up your machine, guys, please, and seeing the fiber optic cable, the size of $50 and a tight coil with zip ties around it. That's a problem. Like you can't operate your machine like that permanently. And most people would see that and be like, oh, it's all tied up and it looks really cute. It's all management. It's really nice. There are things that you need to be able to look at and see and be alerted by it. It has to make you feel something, and that comes with experience and knowledge, and that's a lot of stuff that you're only going to get from guys like the four of us who have been around the block, and we've seen the good stuff and why it's good, and the bad stuff and why it's bad. I will literally recommend people to buy any machine that isn't a dumpster fire if it meets their needs. We're, like I said, we're laser agnostic. I will recommend anything to anyone that meets their needs. That isn't a flaming bag of poop. And shout out to the blue poo back there, Kyle.
Pile of crap.
Really, it's about just identifying things. Popular companies are popular for a reason. Generally, I think that is a good rule of thumb. If you see Thunder Laser selling a machine for $5,000, and you see a white and blue machine on eBay and it's $2,000 and it's the same 63-inch bed, there's a problem. The sum of the parts has to be equal to the total value of the machine, if not more, right? And so we call that the laser litmus test. That's kind of like an internal phrase we use around here. If you look at all of the components of the machine and add up the prices of them, and the machine costs less than that, especially substantially less than that, that's a giant red flag. It's not a deal. It's too good to be true, and you're throwing your money. They're cutting corners somewhere. Something is not adding up. Whether it's QA, whether it's assembly time, they will literally get these guys building these things down to like the second to shave pennies off of the price because the margins can be so thin on them. So it's really important to make sure that whoever's there is being paid well to wire your machine up. You know what I mean? Whoever is installing your laser source is paying attention to what they're putting into it. There's a ton of bait and switch out there where you'll pay for a 60 watt M7 M-R and you'll get an E M7 M-R. Most people would never, ever be able to tell you the difference between those two sources. And honestly, they probably wouldn't notice. But when you're making the purchase, we're talking about a $3,000 difference between the sources. So there's a lot out there, and it is very complicated. There is a lot to know. There is a lot to prepare yourself to make a laser purchase, especially if you're looking for something that's going to be more production and less consumer. You can always go to Xtool. You can always go to Xtool, kick in the front door, grab whatever, and take it home, and you're going to be happy with it, because that's what they do. They build consumer machines that are perfect and the same every single time, and you bring it home and it does exactly what they say it does, and that's it. But once you start stretching your arms out and you're looking at the bigger stuff, that's where you're really going to start stepping on landmines if you don't know what you're looking for. And unfortunately, that's just like, I don't have hours to do that for the people that are watching right now. I'm sure you guys don't either, but there's hundreds of thousands of videos on YouTube. You know what I mean? Take some time away from your project video watching and watch some videos about the fundamentals. Learn how a laser works, why it does the things that it does, and why it requires the parts that it requires to get the beam where it needs to go to burn the stuff. Like, that's the kind of stuff. Once you have a basic understanding of that, those red flags will start popping up. You'll start seeing them without somebody telling you that you need to be looking for them, and things will just kind of fall into place. And that's a time commitment.
The flip to that too is if you want to skip some of those steps, and there's a lot of people that do just blatantly, and that's okay. I get it. There's just only so much time in the day, but there's, it's one of those, like, you can have it easy, you can have it cheap, and you can have it good, and you can only pick two. If you want to skip the homework end of it, and that's okay, just expect to pay more to get a good thing.
Yeah.
Or you're paying less to get not a good thing, kind of thing.
Yeah. If you have time, then you can save money, and if you have money, you can save time. So what you have to invest something. You have to make an investment. If you don't invest anything, that's how you end up with garbage. But that's
and then you end up losing time, money, and everything. So.
Yeah. So definitely. I mean, there's a huge advantage to having a surplus of time, because you could certainly teach yourself everything you need to know to build or mod out the perfect machine that does everything you want it to do, and spend very little on it. Or you could buy a Thunder and it shows up and it's perfect. But you're going to spend twice as much on the Thunder because somebody did all of that sweat equity for you. So it's really a balancing act there. So that's a really good point, Kyle. Really, really good point. I didn't even think of that.
Chris, you got anything to add to that?
No. I'm good.
They pretty much hit it. Anyways, we say all that to we're going to wrap this up. We're an hour and 40, which is a lot longer than we planned on doing. So
a little bonus content.
So we can go around real quick. Anybody has any closing remarks, feel free to speak your piece, and we'll call it a night.
No, I think it was a good show.
It's a great show. If you don't know who me and Kyle are, come visit us over at Laser Everything. It's dope. LaserEverything.net.
Go ahead and plug your stuff. I put your
Yeah, I mean, that's about it. There's links on the website. There's links in the description apparently. So just go to lasereverything.net. We've actually just remapped our site. So we have the new settings databases up there. So if you want settings, instead of asking somebody for them, just go to the site. You can find someone with the exact same source as you who's uploaded settings, or if you have some really good settings and you want to share them with the community, you can upload them there. It's free for everyone. I also just added like 100 laser source manuals to our file database. So if you're looking for the manual for your laser source for some reason, check out lasereverything.net. We probably have it now. I've been trying to kind of get them all in one place because some of them can be really hard to find. So just some free stuff that we have over there. And then, of course, we're on YouTube and we have like 800 videos about lasers. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. That's it.
Just 800. You got anything? That's it, man. Always a pleasure hanging out. You guys are awesome.
Absolutely.
He's awesome. And yeah.
The next time you want nerds to talk for an hour and never shut up, just invite us back and we'll be happy to come back and do it again.
No, I mean, it's been, I think it's been great. Like I said, me and Chris can talk about this all day long, but you guys, I know you guys have a specific skill set as far as the machines that you've used, and you've got stuff that we don't have to offer as far as knowledge, and that's the main reason I wanted to have you on for this.
Tonight was definitely a lesson in perspective, I think. We've definitely treaded along the paths of looking at things differently depending on where you're standing. So
absolutely. So
yeah.
I do thank you guys for Chris, do you have anything you want to add?
No, but I do have a topic for next one, and I'm not going to say it because that'll end up more time.
All
right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, guys. Kyle, Alex, thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
Thanks for having us.
Episode. Hopefully everybody that is watching it or is going to watch it will get some good information out of it. I know we kind of jumped around chasing squirrels, but hopefully the information we put out is pretty good and it's helpful to somebody. So again, thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. We'll get to them if we can. We can also be reached on Facebook. Just to plug my stuff real quick. Rotor Boss, if you guys are looking for rotaries, check out rotaryattachments.com. We got a lot of new stuff coming, and that's one of them. And then, stay tuned. We'll have more information. And I promise, Alex, when that comes out or when I announce that, your podcast will be the first one I do it on. So
that'll be great.
You guys will be the first ones to.
We love having you over there. Chris, you need to stop by sometime. I don't think you've been on, man.
No, I haven't.
Come on by.
Let me know.
Yeah.
We will. We'll connect.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next episode. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you then.
Have a good one.
See you guys.